Cool. Good evening. It's good to be back. Well, I think it's good to be back. It's a bloody lot colder here, that's for sure. 31 degrees out in Mexico, and oh my goodness, you guys, you need to pull your fingers out because you need to be on the next one in Lanzarote. It is going to be epic. It is going to be epic. And again, it's 6 days of pampering, unbelievable. Um, just it was astounding. I arrived a day late, so kind of because my flight was delayed, and whoever followed me on Facebook would have known I was not impressed. I was seriously not impressed. Bloody Washington and in some hotel and $15 for food. Great, thank you. That's really going to buy me a lot. Plate of chips if I'm lucky. Um, anyway, so David, I'm just going to mute you because you're perfect. Thank you. Um, so it was amazing, and it wasn't all fun. It was a lot of education, a lot of motivation, and what they do is they build the whole 6 days up to put you forward, if you like, to going forward and achieving so much more. And what has come out of it is you kind of, one of the things that Orion talked about at the very beginning was you need that breakthrough. And he said it was about being able to break through those limitations that you put on yourself to actually go and achieve it. And he said, you all think because I'm there, no one saw the journey to from here to here. And again, that was just incredible because they were saying, do we give up? Do we do this? And no, we don't give up. So they're just their perseverance about what they were wanting to achieve was amazing. And I have to say, a story after story after story, and we know this business is so important for stories, um, had us in tears. Had us in tears. It was so emotional. Um, I was probably feeling a little bit more emotional than most because I wasn't feeling 100%, as you found on the call last week, and I'm so sorry about that. But sorry, not sorry. Um, but what came out of it was a breakthrough for me to actually believe that much more in myself. And that's what we all need to do. We all need to have that breakthrough and know that we are amazing. We are amazing. Boba, you're amazing. David, you're amazing. Paul, you're amazing. Kelly, you're amazing. Romana, Maura, Ruth, even you, Nigel, you're amazing too.
I was
And
about to say
Tom,
I'm
oh,
the
I
odd one
forgot to
out then.
Tom. Forgot Tom because all I can see is his ceiling. But um,
Um,
there you are.
everybody forgets about me.
Well, if we can only see your ceiling, we just forget who you are.
Sue, can I ask you a question?
Of course.
We was watching you on video and you went from being happy to bursting into tears with emotion. What actually happened at that moment in time that made that kind of spark?
A number of things, really. Just we'd just come out of a session with Hilda. She talked about her journey to motherhood and why it was so important to her. I mean, really, they've just been accepted for adoption after I think it was 17 miscarriages. 17 miscarriages. So when she was going through that, and it gets me every time because I've been through 5 miscarriages. So I know that I've got one special daughter who's now 40. Oh, that's a bit scary. Um, and so that I'd just come out of that meeting. And so the fact that I'd come out of that meeting, I was in an emotional state. I was not feeling well, pretty well the whole trip, unfortunately. And I kept on kind of smiling and grinning and bearing it. But even coming home, I said to Nigel, "Oh, bloody hell, I've had it. I am so over the 6 weeks of feeling unwell." And for those of you who don't know, I've had pneumonia, 3 courses of antibiotics. And thank you, Kelly, for recommending those things. I've been taking those as well. So, I am improving, which is great. But it was it was an emotional thing. I'd arrived late. Also, something else had happened which didn't sit well with me, and that put me in an incredibly emotional state. So, which I'm not about to share.
No.
But um, it was such a special event. But it was then just seeing you guys. I was missing Nigel horrendously, and that always makes me emotional when we're not together, because 42 years, we've been together for 42 years. And so that was the reason I was so emotional. But
Thank you for
just
that.
seeing all your lovely faces, and kind of then me panning round to that fabulous beach and fabulous sea, and it was just divine. But we had some great fun. I haven't posted anywhere near all the pictures, so I will get them up eventually, to give you even more motivation to get into the next one, because they treat you like gods, which is amazing, but they make you work for it as well. So it's not just all fun and games. When I go back to previous retreats we've had, in a previous company, they had one day of about 2 hours, and then it was like, just go and do what you want. That's not the case. It's organized. We had dinners every night. We had a gala dinner. We had a Pirates of the Caribbean night, which was hysterical. When I share those pictures, you're actually going to crack up. Rickard Nilsson, for those of you who know Rickard, who's amazing and a really great partner, he would normally share with Marco, but Marco wasn't there. And of course, Marco had the outfits. And so he ended up dressing up in Shan's spare outfit, which was a female pirate. We were wetting ourselves. It was so funny. And he really took to being dressed in ladies' clothing. So it was highly amusing. And we love him for it. But that was his breakthrough. He said it was about dancing like you didn't care. It was just becoming that completely free person. And he said, I made a massive breakthrough myself. And he stood up on, I think, the last session, which they were asking, what have you taken home from this, on the Saturday, just before gala dinner. And he said, my breakthrough is dressing up in women's clothing. Since we've known him, he's been director. So we've known him for 4 years, and he's been director, and he's been stuck there. And he said, I haven't been sponsoring. I've been talking about sponsoring. I haven't been sponsoring. And he said, now I've gone home with a completely different mindset. So he's best friends with Marco. So sometimes, Marco said it the other night, it falls on deaf ears when you're too close to someone. So maybe you need to step outside that and actually be the person, go with someone else that can help you. And he sat down and talked with Fabian Zerhut, who's a Black ambassador, and he was sponsored by Marco. And Fabian has had his own personal issues in the last year. Anyway, he sat down and talked to him, and Rickard said, I had sunglasses on. He said, thank God that I had sunglasses on, because I was crying behind and I didn't want anyone to see. And he said, I've never cried in front of anybody. And the funny thing was, when he arrived down at gala dinner, he was in a plaid jacket, a shirt, a tie, I mean, Mr. Proper person. And I looked at him and I went, where's your pirate outfit, mate? And he just laughed and he went, well, I dressed up for you. And I went, well, that's very kind of you, but I wanted to see you in your pirate outfit. He said, well, it didn't arrive because Marco was bringing it with him. And Shan said, well, I've got a spare outfit. Little did we know it was going to be a short, I have to find the picture, a short green dress with a hat. And he put his shorts on, he put socks down his boobs, and we cracked up. And he just waltzed around, danced like he didn't care, and even jumped in the pool as well. at the end. He wasn't drunk, but he jumped in the pool and he just said, I know that I'm amazing. And it was just having that acceptance. So, yeah, people come home with a completely different attitude. And I really urge you to get to that next position, to that director position, because you'll automatically qualify for it. And if you've got another half, then the other half has to qualify as well. So you need to do it twice. So that's why Nigel didn't come. Because we weren't going to pay an extra 3,000 for him for a week, and he doesn't sit in the sun anyway. um, anyway, so one of the things that they launched, they were going to launch a test, and it wasn't quite ready. So we know it's going to be ready in the next few weeks, but it's not quite ready. They launched the lookbook. Have you had your email about the lookbook? Well, they're very cheap. They're, I mean, £7 for 10. So I've just ordered 30. And it's a really nice way, and there's no prices in it. So instead, what they're going to do now, instead of the product brochures, which are the product ones, which change, excuse me, hang on a minute. Of course, the prices change every few months after the increases that we've all experienced. So it can last longer. Take over, Nigel.
Well, okay, I'm happy to do that. Sue's experiences are very valid, and actually prompted when she started to talk about what was going on there in Mexico. I thought, you know, what I'm going to cover a little bit about today is something I haven't done in a while, and it's effectively about your self-image and core beliefs for all of us. And the biggest hurdles we all have are ourselves. Is ourself. It's, you know, the results we get are always a consequence of the activity you undertake. And that's driven by the emotions we have and the connections to those outcomes. So what I thought I'd do is kind of explain why we end up where we do as adults, because actually it's pretty straightforward. And oddly enough, it's relatively straightforward to change. So and this, as part of my own personal journey here, I used to run a program called Born Rich. Some of you may have heard it. Some of you may have heard me mention this before. The Born Rich program was conceived and produced by Bob Proctor and John Canary. John subsequently became a very close friend and mentor of ours, and has been was until recently, because he now has a form of dementia called Lewy body syndrome, which is pretty debilitating and rapidly takes people downhill. And unfortunately, he's not the man he was. But in the prime of his life, when I first met him, he was 64, and he taught me so much in such a short period of time. And one of the things I was doing then was facilitating this program called Born Rich. Born Rich essentially drives some of the thinking around what I'm going to share with you today, but there are elements of it that are not covered by it, because in a way they're kind of technical. But I like to understand the mechanism, the physical as well as the emotional mechanism of what's being done, or why we end up where we are. And my kind of questioning of myself began in my late 30s, early 40s, about why I was where I was and why I wasn't where I would like to be, or where I thought I'd like to be. And the more I began to understand, the less I knew, because essentially it didn't drive real knowledge. It didn't drive me to make the changes. Despite the fact I was facilitating this program called Born Rich, and there's a page in the Born Rich workbook where you effectively design your life. It's that page where you kind of write out the sort of life you'd like to have. And I had people coming back on subsequent years' courses, sometimes several years of courses, with exactly the same page 17 as the one they'd written on their first course. And so this started to raise the question in my head: is why weren't people really accepting the concepts contained within the program and actually implementing them in a way which produced changes in their own results? And I had to say, I had to look at my own as well. And as a consequence of that, I then trained to become a hypnotherapist, because I couldn't understand why this subconscious change wasn't happening. People weren't being driven to make the development changes that they all knew intellectually they could make. You know, at the end of the day, the results that people get are only those that they choose to make happen. We all do the same thing. Essentially, we construct an idea and create the activity that brings that idea about, as long as it resonates with our core beliefs. And we can develop the habits that bring it about. And that's where the difficulty is. And this is one of the things that I began to really understand as I became a hypnotherapist, because whilst I no longer practice it, I still do it for people who want it. And I still know that all the mechanisms that work in order to help to blur the lines, as I'm going to demonstrate a bit later, or I'm going to talk about a bit later. Blur the lines between the conscious and the subconscious. So I'm going to share a little presentation with you that I put together very quickly. I'm going to write a complete course on this, because the more I understand, the older I get, the more I realize and appreciate why people get stuck in staying where they are, is because their conscious thoughts are not in line with their subconscious beliefs. Because the work is done in the subconscious, not in the conscious mind. You can think all day long, I'm the greatest this, that, or the other, and your subconscious is simply saying, no, you're not. You don't actually believe that. That's not who you are, because otherwise you become the person you start thinking about. So how do you drive that change? So what I thought I'd do is I'd go back to the base mechanisms of how we arrive where we arrive at. And actually, guess what? Surprise, surprise, it all starts in childhood. And our parents. So you can blame your parents for who you are to a large extent. But as the saying goes, it's never too late to have a happy childhood. Because if you understand what's going on in your subconscious, you can correct the stuff that you don't really want, and you can drive change in a way which is significant and transformative. So Sue, can you just make me co-host, please? You have already. Okay, thank you.
I have already.
Yeah, okay. I'm just going to share my screen with you all. Start from here. Start from the beginning. So I put this together very quickly this afternoon. It's the beginnings of what will become a much bigger presentation and course, because this is the thing that makes change happen. This stuff makes change happen. And the results are driven by the way you work on how you understand and then ultimately change your own core beliefs. So as you see here, misspelt yours. All your results are dependent on the way you think and your core beliefs about yourself. You don't recognize it. I know in misspelling, Sue, it's fine. Thank you. You don't recognize it. And before I get into the detail of what that is, why these things happen, I want to talk a little bit about the way your brain works. Because ultimately, this is what drives the understanding we have of ourselves. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the 5 different brainwave states. Now, this might seem like a bit of a technical thing, but there's a very good reason why I'm going to talk about this. Gamma is the highest rate of brainwave, the fastest brainwaves, and associated with high levels of concentration, focus, cognitive processing. That's when you're ultra concentrated. It doesn't happen for very long, and it doesn't happen very often. This is the state that most people are in current stressed societies like ours. This is a beta wave state, which is 12 to 30 hertz. That's the speed at which your brain is actually ticking over. Active thinking and alertness. Most people live in this state of beta waves. It's the fight or flight state. It's not the state that actually generates considered action without thought. And this is the bit where most people live most days. And it's not a very healthy place to be, actually, because this is where you think about what activity you're undertaking, and your thinking mind does not work that fast. What we want to get into is the state below this, because this is the state that effectively takes action without thought. This is what Professor Steve Peters calls the computer, if you like. This bit acts much more rapidly. It processes information in a way which is almost entirely without thought, and takes the action that's relevant and necessary in order to achieve whatever is in front of you at that particular time. It's the state of creativity and visualization. And this is a place for active activity on a day-by-day basis. Now, these three are all conscious states that we as adults experience. And the fourth state is the one that most children are in up until around about the age of 7. And beyond the age of 7, they begin to develop the conscious rhythms above theta wave. Now, theta, these are associated with deep relaxation, meditation, and creativity. I witnessed our granddaughter this weekend in the playroom playing with some of her dolls, and she was having a two-way conversation with the dolls on the basis of whatever was going on in her head at that moment in time. Now, being a child at that level, there's no consciousness in terms of thinking about, they're not thinking about where the next meal's coming from or any of that stuff. They're just responding to their environment and acting like a sponge, as I'll come on to in a moment. However, in adults, this is the blurring point between your conscious thinking and your subconscious thinking. And this is the mechanism to get into. I'm going to flag it now in terms of helping to change what you believe about yourself. Because let's just take Zinzino for a second and talk about the results that people have. Sue and I would like a lot more personally sponsored partners. Well, how does that happen? Simple enough. You go out and meet more people. Because it's all about the numbers, the number of people you know, the number of people you meet, the number of people you expose their opportunity to, the number of no's you get determines the number of yeses and therefore the number of partners. What you do with those partners is another thing entirely, but actually creating partners to put in the pipeline is an activity that you either do well and consistently, or you don't because of some kind of block that's saying, I'm not good enough, or maybe whatever. And the last brainwave state is delta. And this is you're asleep or you're unconscious. But it's also associated with healing and regeneration. And in humans, your body does an awful lot of work at this level while you're asleep. Of course it does. Otherwise, we wouldn't sleep for 8 hours a day. So the one thing we're going to talk about in more detail is the theta wave state. And then the waking state as a consequence of that, and how you change the mechanism, or rather the conscious, subconscious thoughts that you've got about yourself in terms of your own core values about who you are. First 7 years of life, I've been touching on it already. Theta state, children have a sponge-like ability to absorb and assimilate information. Essentially, they're receiving without evaluating. So think about that. We as adults, talking to children, do so from an adult perspective. There's a concept in psychology, which was Eric Berne, psychologist, who effectively posited the idea that there are 3 states of communication between humans: adult, parent, and child. Now, we all act as parents with small children, mostly driven from the perspective of protecting them from harm in some way or another, or protecting them from, or rather protecting ourselves, or perhaps I should say, from the point of view of them being naughty enough to make it a problem for ourselves. So we're teaching them from the perspective of the parent. Now, what happens to the child is that when they receive information, they become deductive to that information. What does that mean? It just gets placed in their head and assimilated as an experience. And if that is emotionally traumatic, it gets driven into the subconscious. So if there are particularly traumatic experiences in childhood, then what happens is that when the adult's treating the child as an adult rather than as a child, then the emotions that are attached to experience, and the more intense that experience, the harder the wiring is. So you see in children that have been abused as children, they become abusers as adults. You see the same with bullies. They become bullies as adults because that experience is the one that was as part of the way that it was driven into them as children. And those are very difficult things to begin to overcome. I know they're negative ones in that context. Equally, there are very positive ones in that context. I mean, it's I don't know whether any of you are familiar with the Montessori and the Steiner methods of teaching, but essentially those are about rounding the child's emotional stability right up through to the age of 7. They don't teach maths, English, and all those kinds of things. They're just trying to build stable, emotionally stable children, because those really hard experiences as children become accepted as the subconscious, in the subconscious, as part of who they are as a consequence of the emotion that's delivered. All of us are in the same, exactly the same position. We're a reflection of what happened to us in childhood. And you hear people talk about personal development and becoming better, a better me, essentially. Well, this is about this process. For those of you who've listened to Marco, in particular, he's come at life from a pretty tough background, a pretty tough childhood in an environment that was not well off. And as he says, at times, you know, a lot of the people he had as friends as kids, they're either dead or in jail. So the kind of emotional experiences he had as a small child were pretty negative ones in the main. And yet he's become a very positive, caring, empathetic adult because he's worked on himself in ways which have changed the person he is. And we've all done that to a greater or lesser extent. We're not the same person we were either physically or emotionally, say, 5 years ago, because of the experiences that have intervened in between and the concepts and the beliefs we've now begun to adopt as adults. However, the hard-driven core values that we got as children are still there, and those are the toughest ones to get rid of. And of course, as I say here, we're all carrying this into adulthood. So if you want to change your results, then you have to start to think about changing the way you think on a subconscious level and believing you're worthy of it. Now, I know that won't be true for a lot of you. I'm sure you do think you're worthy of it. But for those who are getting the results they want, then they're definitely living a life that's saying that I'm worthy of it. For those who aren't, then there is a block there somewhere that's holding you back from achieving the things you'd like. So let's just talk a bit more about sort of core beliefs we've got. They're beliefs that are ingrained assumptions, ideas, and values that we hold about ourselves. Also that we hold about other people and the world around us. So, you know, I'm fond of saying that there are 7 billion people on the planet. There are actually 7 billion worlds, because they're all unique to every individual. Your world's not mine, and mine is not yours. But there are common beliefs that we probably, because we're part of Zinzino, we hold about ourselves that keep us together and bring us together as a group. These beliefs are often formed in childhood, as I've touched on, and in adolescence, based on the experiences, interactions with others, and cultural and societal influences. Now, cultural influences and societal influences do play a huge part in the way that people interact with their world. We can see that because of the differences that there are between nations and religions and cults and various other things. They're driven by the environment in which people have been brought up. Because of course, we don't learn these. We learn these things. We're not born with them. So these are driven in as we become, as we get older and older through childhood and then into adulthood. And very often they're supported by the environment in which we continue to exist. It's why you hear it's so difficult for people to get out of cults, especially those they've been born into. Core beliefs shape our thoughts, our emotions, and then our behaviors. And of course, they carry significant impact on our mental and emotional well-being. Now, I can talk again from a fairly personal point of view about this because my older brother is a schizophrenic. He's labeled as a schizophrenic. But actually, I'm not sure that is the case. I think he began to construct things in his head after he had a very bad LSD trip in his late teens. And I think it opened doors to things that just kept coming back at him. And consequently, his life has been one of illness, hospitalization. Yeah, not very nice, effectively. But all of that was driven through the thoughts that led him to the idea that he should participate in this kind of environment. So it has a significant impact on people, their mental and emotional well-being as well. And negative or limiting core beliefs can hold us back from reaching our potential. They do, no question. Because I look at the people that we are associated with, and you know that there are people are working hard, they're continuing to work to achieve the things they have, but sometimes it feels like you're walking through molasses because you're not making the progress you'd like. And maybe that's because the behaviors we've got clearly aren't quite good enough to generate the results that we're really looking for. Positive and empowering core beliefs can help us achieve our goals and lead a fulfilling life. So, understanding and changing core beliefs is an important part of personal growth and development. It's probably the key to it, really, genuinely. So let's look at how these are built, how these beliefs are built. And I stole this from John Canary. I didn't steal it, actually. He gave me a long time ago permission to use all of his material, and some of this I've kind of plucked bits out of in order to share them with you. And I'll share some of the other stuff as we move forward. So your beliefs are at the core of your mind, your subconscious mind. It's the bit that effectively allows you to deal with all of the influences that you have in your life. You filter them all in a way which says, if that's something that resonates with me, or is it not? Is it acceptable for me to engage with it or not? And the basis of those beliefs effectively determines what decisions you take. So this is driven in part by the focus you have, of course. Your focus on what gets your attention supports the belief system you already have, because that's what you currently believe. That's your comfort zone. It's the bit that it's natural for you to focus on those things because it reinforces the position you currently got. And stuff that's outside of that is sometimes somewhat disturbing. And that in turn then leads on to our own self-talk. So I challenge you with something. What are you saying to yourself every day when you start to think about your Zinzino business? Oh, it's too much trouble. It doesn't work for me. Blah, 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 blah. The negative side of it. The other side is saying, you know what? I'm going to pick that phone up. I'm going to pick that phone up. I'm going to pick that phone up. And I'm going to call people. And I'm going to accept the no's because I've got to get those to get to yeses. And that self-talk and activity starts to drive change. But if you just reinforce your existing belief and your position, guess what happens? Not very much. And that's a position that a lot of people end up in. I'm not saying anybody on this call is in that position. They're not. In fact, I know they're all not. Hang on a second. And where does it go from here? Then it's about action, isn't it? So what you focus on is allowed for by your beliefs. The self-talk you have supports the belief system you currently got. The actions you take are as a consequence of that. No different for me, no different for any of us. This is where we are. So if you want to change what you get, you have to change your beliefs about yourself in terms of what you can get. And that's the key to all of this. And in part, this is always this is reinforced by the people you associate with. Now, the beautiful thing about Zinzino and pretty much every other network is they want everyone to succeed. And you'll hear it repeated again and again and again. And Dave does this. He does this like a stuck record in many ways. It's all about the way you think. For things to change, we have to change. How do we change? We change the way we think. Because the possibilities only change when we change our belief about our ability to have those possibilities. Because we essentially provide ourselves with our own self-limiting beliefs, don't we? So how does this help? It helps to understand what's going on and why we arrive at where we are right now. And what the limiting core beliefs very often are, you know, life's hard, then you die. Yeah, life's a bitch, then you die. The odds are against you. All good things come to an end. You must compete to get ahead, or any variation on the I'm not enough syndrome, such as I'm not educated enough. That's a common one in Zinzino. I don't know enough. I'm not rich enough. I'm not talented enough. I'm not young enough. I don't like wearing women's clothing. And as in my case, well, I can't dance. That's because I choose not to do it very often. And that's not a bit like, I think, you know, what Rickard had was the sort of moment I have sometimes occasionally when I've had a bit too much wine to drink, and I get up and do a bit of dad dancing. But the only occasion where I've significantly worn women's clothing was on a 5-legged pub race round Farnham, where we had to drink half a pint of beer in the 14 pubs along the way, and a pint in the first and the last. And well, I dressed up as a nurse. And well, that's probably the first and last time I'll ever do that. So I'm not going to try and
I'll have to
emulate
share the photograph of that. I'll have to find a photograph of that.
So yeah, so I don't see myself as a dancer. One of my limiting beliefs is I can't dance. And I have to say, I'm not overly bothered about that at all. It's not something I'm seeking to change particularly. Although maybe one of these days I should, in order to prove the fact that I can. So I want you to just, really what I'm trying to prompt here is you thinking about the things that are holding you back. If you feel you're being held back. And I think most of us have kind of things they aren't doing that they could do that would improve the way their business works. And it's that I want you to kind of address is, what are the things that I'm not doing that I should be doing in order to move myself closer to where I want to be? Now, knowing where you want to be is the other side of the equation. Because if you don't know where you want to be, there's not much point in changing. And this is the challenge for a lot of people. I don't really know what I want. So you have to choose what you want and look at your life in a way which says, I want more here. I want more here. Now, what's going to go on in your head at that moment? Let's just take what Orion said to himself, for example. I want to be a millionaire. And he did that because his mum and dad couldn't afford the electricity bill one time when he was very small. So this goes back to being a child again. He said, I'm never going to be in a situation where I can't pay my bills. He didn't say it like that at that stage, but the emotion was that he wasn't going to be put in that position, driven into his subconscious as a child. So he was already set up with that subconscious belief. Now, what he could have said is to himself, it could have been an emotion which said, I'm never going to be able to afford anything. So he could have flipped it one way or the other. And in this sense, it's how you deal with it that's the most important thing of all. So where you step in your head and you think, I want to do that, what's your emotional reaction to that? I want to do that. Does it raise an excitement or does it raise a fear? Because one or the other is going to be the basis of the change of what you do, the subconscious you've got as a consequence. So let me flip to the next slide. So who's driving your bus? You've got to work on the fact that your subconscious is driving your bus. And these are the 5 principles of convincing your subconscious about what to go on to do next. Repetition. So Sue and I currently, we repeat. We're going to be crowned. I'm so happy and grateful now that I'm a crown with Zinzino. Written on a gold card. Written on a gold card every single day. Here's mine today. Every single day. And then I write it on the back of a piece of paper at least 5 times, normally 7. Repetition, 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 repetition. Why? Because it moves you towards the belief that it's going to happen. You know, and you assume it's going to happen and feel the emotion attached to that assumption. By doing that, subconscious starts to engineer what's going to happen because it's driven to believe that it's going to be happening. Second thing, identification with a group or parent. Group, in our case, group. Zinzino, the people within Zinzino, the organization, the culture that's being developed here. As a child, of course, it would be a parent. But in this context, the group that we're in helps to drive the thinking that we have in order to move us toward where we'd like to be. And that's largely what the conscious thought is. Oh, I'd like to be a director, or I'd like to be a crown. No, I am. Always in the present tense. I am so happy and grateful now that I am a crown with Zinzino, a black crown with Zinzino this year. Why? Because now you're setting it up to happen. So third thing, ideas presented by authority figures. Orion tells Sue every single time, there's nothing to hold you back to being a black crown. You are amazing. Said it in Italy.
He said it in Italy, and he also said it in Mexico. And he came up to me and he just whispered to me, "You are amazing. I am in awe of you." And I just, and it makes you feel special.
Yeah. So ideas presented by authority figures. These are, there's no magic in this. It's just focusing on the things that you want and convincing your subconscious that it's going to happen. When that happens, guess what? It does happen. Fourth thing, intense emotion. So every time you think about this word, for example, crown, you've got to experience the emotion of actually being there, of what's going to happen when you walk across the stage with a plastic crown on. I know it would be nice if it was real, but well, it is real. But it's a symbol of the reality and the achievement, and that's the point. There's an emotion attached to that. Everyone talks about.
Can I just interrupt for a second? Sorry, darling.
Right.
Can I just interrupt? One of Rickard said on the last day, he said, "I've made the decision." He said, "I'm taking that uniform or that outfit home." And he said, "When I get to Crown, you're going to see me on stage in that outfit." So that you've got to be in Oslo in October, because that will be definitely worth getting your camera out for.
So yeah, and clearly he experienced early intense emotion while he was away in Mexico, made a big breakthrough because of it. That's driven in, because the emotion's a whole being issue. There's no conscious interruption in that process. It's coming from deep down, and so you're vibrating at that energy. That's the point about this. That's what intense emotion does. That's why it's so, in a sense, damaging in terms of children, as much as enlightening and exciting for them. I witnessed River when they were away in the Maldives last year, or the year before, I can't remember. He caught a barracuda. The reaction that he had when he caught it was just unbelievable. He'll remember that experience for the rest of his life as a high moment because of the intensity of his excitement in actually achieving that. And the fifth thing is hypnosis, guided meditation. You can essentially create a guided meditation for yourself that will help you get into the state that blurs the lines between conscious and subconscious. If you remember right at the beginning, I was talking about brainwave states. That state of brainwave at that moment is theta, that blending between being awake and being asleep. That is the line at which the subconscious is wide open for you to imprint it with the basis of the change that you're seeking. And you can do that with a tape. You can do it on your phone. In fact, I've got a script I'll share with people if you want it that will help you to achieve that. You can record it for yourself and play it to yourself as you begin to drift off. Or indeed, if you meditate, do it while you're meditating. So just to talk about the blurring of the line again, this is the stick man. This is a concept that Proctor and Canary came up with to illustrate the way the mind works. Now, the top circles, you're effectively your conscious and your subconscious, and the bit at the bottom with the 4 sticks on is the body, because essentially the body's driven by what goes on in the conscious and the subconscious. This line isn't separated between the two. Conscious thought, all sorts of stuff happening in conscious thought. Very little gets driven into the subconscious unless you focus upon it and you experience it emotionally, and you do it enough to overwrite the habits that are there. Because it's thoughts, feelings. Now, in this area, your beliefs and habits reside as well. So your beliefs and habits sustain each other because they're all in the subconscious. Who's driving the bus? Your subconscious is. So if you want change, you've got to work on this subconscious concept of yourself, the image you've got of yourself in terms of the way you feel about what it is you keep saying to yourself you want to have. We know the mechanisms in Zinzino, what the process of sharing with people is. It's making a very simple connection and asking a simple thing. You know, if there is a test, you all know the words on the one side in terms of product. On the other side, in terms of businesses, hi, it's Nigel. Listen, I just wonder whether you're open to looking at something alongside what you're doing right now. Are you open to a new project at this moment? Yes, no, what is it? That's all it can be. What's the difficulty in that? Not very much. So this is where the action happens. Remember, conscious thought, subconscious activities driven from the heart, and that's when the action happens. And of course, from action comes results. Some of them are going to be results you don't want, like no's. Some will become results you do want, like yeses. One we had today. Had a new partner join today. Great guy. This change happens in a theta brainwave state. So in order to achieve the mechanism or to use the mechanism to drive the change to where you want to go and make yourself comfortable with it, start meditating, self-hypnosis, convincing your subconscious that this is what exists. Because when it thinks it does exist, guess what? It does exist. So this is the simplicity of it. That's the last slide. Got questions? Ask me. Shocked. Does it make sense?
That was
Thumbs up,
good.
please.
That
I have
was
to revisit
amazing.
it.
Very educational. Thank you.
Right, guys, I want to
Who's
share
going
with
crown?
you.
Who's going crown? Hands up. Thank you.
That means we could be president. Woohoo!
Yes. So the repetition is, I am so happy and grateful now that I am crowned with Zinzino. Put a date on it.
What we'll do is we'll create some goal cards for you, based on the ones that we used to get from John Canary and the Born Rich program. And I'm sure that at some stage, and maybe in the summer, that we can do a weekend, because it's a 2-day program. Okay, Helly, nice to see you. It's a 2-day program that you need to do it. And despite the fact it was, I don't know when it was recorded, in the 70s, wasn't it?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, in the 70s. You have to put aside the fact that they're all dressed in strange old dresses and suits and what have you, but the information is magical. Absolutely, it is magnificent information, and it's still valid today. And one of the things that, kind of putting it into that subconscious state, as Nigel was saying, is just you just have to believe it and you have to work with it, and eventually your brain just goes, oh, that's what she is, she's a crown, or that's what they are, they're ambassador. And one of the things that, for me, that spoke to me more than anything in the whole Born Rich program was let go, let God. You can't change anything that's going on. You just have to let it be. And for me, that was, you just have to let the universe provide it for you. And that was so powerful for me. And when we first did that program, I used to go quite frequently because Nigel was running it. And one of the things that I've been qualified in our previous company for car qualified for well over 18 months. I was losing £750 per month on a car qualification because I didn't have a car. I hadn't purchased a car. And it was then, oh, now I understand it. I have to see it, believe it, it's mine. So I went shopping online for a car. we'd done the event over the weekend, so Saturday, Sunday. I put into action what I was planning. I found the car, the color, the style, the brand. So it was an Audi convertible, and it was the lairiest turquoise color you could imagine. And there were 6 in the country. We actually drove to Chelmsford, and where there was one there, and we purchased it. And by Friday, it was on my driveway. But it was that visualization and understanding that you can achieve anything you want to. So for me, that was like I had this picture on my wall of this turquoise car and went, wow, that's cool. Everyone used to say, and I go, yeah, that's my car. That's my car. I'm just waiting for it to be delivered. And no one believed me. And when it arrived on the drive, I had people driving and going, geez, you weren't joking. And I went, no. An old friend picked up and said, I need to know what you're doing. You've got this nice car. We had a Renault 5 before then. We had this lovely car, which was, kind of an Audi convertible, which was stunning. It really was. It was still my favorite car ever. And it was a real eye turner. So if that's what you want, just have to manifest it. You have to create it, and believing that you have it. It's perfect, and it was so you can each do that. You can each do that, and I just wanted to share with you. I wanted to share with you. Bear with me a minute. To make you giggle now. So this is a very, very. Oh, hang on a minute. It's in my WhatsApp. I've just sent a video. You ready for this, guys? Let me just, oh, hang on. Let me see if it will, okay. This is it. That's the video. That is Rickard in Sham's outfit. Can you see it all right? Yeah. It was hysterical. And then it got worse. Anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. So we look forward to seeing him dressed on stage in women's clothing.
I'm
when he
looking
goes
forward to seeing
down.
Dermot do it.
Me too. Me too, Dermot.
I think you're the only one who's got the nerve for that, Dermot.
Yeah, you probably have got the nerve for it, Dermot. How old are you now? 87 or 88? You're muted at the moment.
Yeah.
Are you
88.
88?
And I'll be laughing the most when I do it.
I know, and there's life in the old dog yet.
2 fat ladies.
Uh-huh. You better be
Anyway.
careful.
Anyway, so I know that some of you, Bobby, when your guy has paid, that means you qualified for 200% ECB for next month. I do urge anyone, yeah, woohoo. Well done, and I'm really proud of you. You've worked so hard at getting him, and he's a lovely guy. I was hoping he was going to be on the call today. He's a really lovely guy. He speaks English, which is really beneficial for me because my Croatian's a bit rubbish. But he's a lovely guy, and he's a businessman. He's a businessman. He knows what he's doing. He's going to rock this. I feel he's going to rock this. He's excited about it too.
We have big goals, yeah.
Yeah, big goals, and I'm hoping to go to Croatia in June with Bobby, and hopefully Nigel will come too. We just got to work out logistics about what's happening, and
please make it. I already booked a Zinzino meeting Sunday, 4th of June, in my mom's backyard.
Okay.
So it's gonna be big, huge group of ladies, like 20 of them. My mom will provide the food and everything. You're all
perfect.
Wow.
Happy days.
I think
Happy days. We look forward to it. We will look forward to it. But yeah, so exciting times, and Bob is going to put the Balkans on the map. Romana obviously is her sponsor, so she's going to benefit from the volume underneath there as well. So very exciting. Really, really happy. So I think that's probably about it. You've only got a few more days, and remember that if you haven't qualified, if you haven't found that person with an ultimate pack, because you just need one ultimate pack under your sponsored by yourself, then that's going to give you the 8 points that you need, action points, and it's going to provide you with 200% ECB. If you haven't qualified by the 30th, then you do have the option to buy what's called a restock pack, which will then qualify you for that. And I think, what was that, 349, was it, Nigel?
330 something, if I remember rightly. It's not a massive.
339. It's going to be a bit more in euros. So, but it will give you then some tests that you can actually go and share with people as well. So it's about sharing those things as soon as possible. But do try to do it either through customer points. So you need 8 customer points, or an ultimate underneath you. And if you do that, then that will qualify you for the 200% ECB in May. And May is going to be stonkingly massive. It's going to be massive. So don't get left behind. Don't get left behind. And we're here to help you. We are home now. We're working. I'm working. So even despite I might be a bit coffee still. So but we are working, and we're happy to help you in any way we can. So kind of go forth and multiply in the nicest sense of the words.
And work on your subconscious.
Yeah, work on your subconscious. Believe you can do it. We'll get those cards made up. And for those of you who we'll hopefully probably be able to have them by the end of the week. And if we can do that, then we will hand those out to people at the meeting on Saturday in Milton Keynes. So Milton Keynes, if you're not booked, I think David is, Bobby is, Tom, and obviously Maura, you're both in Ireland. Paul Bursey is, and Ruth, I know it's a long way for you. Are you? I can't hear you.
I'm coming.
Oh, you're coming. Fabulous.
Right. Good.
Fabulous. Oh, I'm chuffed to bits. That's
Yes, I just haven't
excellent.
booked my ticket yet.
Well, just get on and book it, darling.
Yes,
get on
not
and
the
book it.
hotel.
Oh, well done. Well done.
Yeah.
But yes, no, really exciting. And you're going to see an awful lot from what we experienced in Mexico, which hopefully you will find of great value, really great value. So I think that's probably about it. We've kind of gone over our hour normal. I've recorded this. I'll put it in the WhatsApp chat so that people can replay it if need be. And yeah, let's all get this done. Let's get this done. Dermot, we've got your email, so I don't know whether Nigel's responded to it.
Not yet.
I've got the email. We've been a bit busy this afternoon, so but yeah, exciting times, and let's go forth. We want to be one of the biggest teams.
We will be the biggest team.
Well, we've got, and also Sunday. Don't forget Sunday. We've got the meeting. We've got Sunday, which I also placed in the team support.
Mhm.
Sunday. Hang on a minute. I'm just going in and just seeing what it is. Hang on a minute.
Yeah, Kirsten, yes.
Yeah, Kirsten. A message from Kirsten. So it's 2000 CET, 1900 UK. So and UK and Ireland. So 7 o'clock UK and Ireland on Sunday, and 2000 CET and South Africa. So you need to be on that. If you're running for the next level, you need to be on it, because I know it's going to be epic. I know it's going to be epic. So please make sure, if you haven't got that link, please let me know. But I put it in the Flawless Diamond group. Again, I know that your new man, Dubravko, is in Malta on holiday, but he might be able to get on. He might be Sunday evening. So I think there are a couple of hours difference. It might be a bit late. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'll
But,
invite him. Yeah, I'll explain.
Yeah, so invite him to that as well, because that would be worthwhile, and we need to add him into the groups as well. So We're off now. 6 minutes past 6. Lovely to speak to you all. Hope you found value of that tonight, and excited for what's going to happen in the next few days. Take care.
See you on Saturday. Bye.
Yeah, look forward to it.
Bye.